what is Chronobacter sakazaki?
Yeah. So it's an opportunistic bug, basically, meaning that it typically will only cause infection if it's in a subject that has a weakened immune system or immunocompromised,
So it's not going to hurt me.
It could, but it's just less likely.
Probably not likely. Okay.
And infants have a developing immune system. That's why they're also susceptible.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the huge part of it.
I also don't drink Similac, but that makes sense. Okay, so it's opportunistic, meaning it only attacks, or it's only noticed really when there is a strong opportunity.
It only creates symptoms. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It only creates an infection or symptoms in opportunistic immuno situations.
All right. So turns out there are only 3 manufacturers or plants in the U.S., roughly, I think it said 3, that produce baby formula in the entire country. That blows my mind because there are a lot more than 3 babies. I don't know where to go with that. How do we do that? Like, that just is this not an incredibly dumb idea to only have that little of a supply?
Yeah, it seems like there's many parts to that, but these manufacturers are subject to pretty strict regulation. I mean, we have a little bit of experience in compounding as to how complex the manufacturing process is, but these facilities are held to an even higher standard. And so to be compliant and to open a factory, I couldn't even estimate the costs. And so then it pigeonholes these sorts of manufacturers to companies that already have the resources to do so.
Yeah, particularly because Chronobacter does thrive in powdered, very dry environments. So it doesn't really affect liquid, which is sterile formula or products.
Yes.
Or the average capsules that you're making, et cetera. But it really can thrive in dry places such as, formula, powdered formula, starches, teas, things like that. And I think why you don't really see a lot of the issues in something like a starch or an herbal tea is because of who's getting them.
Yeah.
It's infants getting the formula. And that's why I think you've seen, and even though it hasn't been dramatic numbers, it's been obviously an extreme dramatic effect on those families affected.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't happen to everybody, but the people that it does affect, it's a catastrophic effect. It said
all that product is going to infants.
Right.
100% of that product is going to infants who, like we said before, have, a developing immune system or susceptible.
And you mentioned it thrives in the dry environment. That was another thing that I read in this article was that it doesn't survive in the liquid formulas because in a factory environment, they boil it and it's sterilized.
Twofold. Yeah. It's just not happy in that environment.
Yeah.
A, and then B, it's sterilized anyway from all from
and
all
parents,
bacteria and germs, etc. The problem is that liquid is much more expensive.
Yes, of course. Right. And parents aren't going to boil the formula before they let it come down to 98 degrees. I was a parent.
That's a crying baby.
That's not a thing I'm going to wait for. But that would be the only way to really prevent it 100%.
Correct. Basically sterilizing it yourself. Exactly.
Man, that seems like it is a high risk environment for that. Dang. So the one primary factory in Indiana, was it Indiana or Michigan? Right on the border. Southern Michigan. Sturgis, Southern Michigan. Abbott Laboratories, they had a Chronobacter outbreak that ended up getting missed. And now in the aftermath, there's all kinds of people pointing fingers and saying, I warned my superiors, yada, yada. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. The bottom line is a bunch of kids ended up hurt and dead as a result of this. And the FDA, when they shut down the factory, shut it down for a good long time. They had to do a whole bunch of things that they should have done a long time ago, like fixing the roof of the facility because it was leaking and there was standing water. Really rough situation, not a good thing. But I believe the facility is open again and it's producing again. We've also seen an import of formula from other countries. That's a great question. Why couldn't we import formula from other countries before?
In regulations, because of these issues, because it does require such a, like Dante said, such a high level of facility management and oversight and inspection.
Okay.
It's just a level that, because there are obviously drugs that are produced overseas and
Right.
they're FDA regulated, but this is just, like Dante said before, another level of scrutiny, and it's just, and this predates Trump and Biden.
Yeah.
It goes
It's not
back a long
political.
time. Correct. They did lift some of the imports over the past year for more specialty formulas.
Okay.
So because Similac, the company Abbott makes not just Similac, which is more generally used, but also some very specialty formulas.
Okay.
For kids with certain issues and health issues. So those bans were lifted. I don't know how long they're lifted for, but at least for right now, that at least alleviated that pain for a lot of parents.
That's good. So in practical terms, I mean, there's only a couple of manufacturers, and what I read from this article is that basically we're all pointing fingers at Abbott right now, but the bottom line is it could have been any of them, and in the past has been any of them. There's no way to fully eliminate this. So what does a parent need to do to keep their child as safe as possible?
Oh man, that's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. I think number one, if you can afford the liquid formula, you do that. I know from experience it is a little more convenient as well.
Yeah.
My wife has kind of gone back and forth. She's in charge of that, but we've done a lot of the liquid formula, and it is, at least from that point, we know it's safe and it's also pretty convenient. Even with breastfeeding, you still want to be careful with the equipment. So you want to make sure that it's washed and sterilized and stored properly.
It's true. I guess you could get a lot of bacteria in there.
Yes. Yeah. And even because it's still about that environment, that dry powdered environment, you could have a quality product and you could have it can spread by contact with surfaces. Obviously, that's how it got in there in the first place. So you have dirty hands and you're sticking your scoop in there. You're setting it on a counter. You've got other kids running around. You can easily infect it yourself. That's where a lot of this becomes very complicated. I mean, what are the odds that some of these kids got meningitis and Chronobacter infections, and they were taking the formula that was recalled. So it's pretty easy to draw that line. But why legally and technically it can be contaminated from other sources and it can be contaminated in the home.
Yeah, the article was talking about genetic testing, I think, of the bacteria in the kids, trying to check it against the formula that they had, and then also trying to find that in the facility. And the bottom line was that it was virtually impossible to connect all of the dots perfectly. But as one person said in the article, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Yeah.
That's rough.
It's just a warning to be careful in your own home as well with what you're using.
Exactly.
Sure.
What are the symptoms and signs of a Chronobacter infection in a child?
I mean, typically they'll prevent febrile. So with seizures, they're fussy, all the normal symptoms of a sick or unhappy baby. So that's what makes it tough.
So it's high fever.
High fevers, almost again like any sort of,
just like a flu looking thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Could be just a basic fever. Doesn't want to eat, crying a lot. Some pretty basic stuff, which makes it difficult.
Ugh.
Yeah.
What the real concern is, no parent wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
But the real concern is that it can lead to infections, basically of the meningia, the spinal fluid, in the brain, and lead to meningitis. And even sepsis. So the meningitis is really the main concern. 20% of infants who do get meningitis pass away. And that's in the US and 40% globally.
Yeah.
So that's really what we're talking about here. I mean, if most kids are going to fight this off and have, just a little basic fussy period.
Yeah.
But it's that percentage when it can lead to meningitis.
Okay. So a lot of kids could, get this and not even know because it's just a normal infection.
Yeah.
It looks like a normal infection.
Exactly.
And they fight it off and they're fine. Yeah. Okay.
Especially under 2 months old. They're at higher risk for meningitis.
Got it.
From the Chronobacter.
And then with treatment, if it doesn't progress, it's mainly just supportive measures,
Okay.
In that respect. And then once you determine if it's definitely the Chronobacter bug that's, maybe led to this infection, there's antibiotics and such downline that.
But
you
all
would
of that
use. Yes.
you would find out by going to the hospital, getting tested.
Yes,
yada,
they would
yada,
do.
yada.
They would have to do cultures, the whole 9 yards.
So basically, if baby doesn't feel better in 24, 48 hours, something like that, you need to go see the doctor.
Yeah, I would say like your typical precautions, any
Yeah.
sort of persistent fever, fussiness,
If you see a
seizures,
seizure,
seizures can occur.
Yeah,
and
go
obviously these are
immediately.
so, like many issues, they're just so non-specific. So you're always better off safe than sorry.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and the meningitis, they can be refusing to eat, also not like being handled, which is definitely kind of an odd side effect, and also be kind of floppy and unresponsive. So that's whenever again you've crossed over from Chronobacter really into the meningitis.